Hi, everybody. Thank you for your patience. We had a little bit of a hiccup with technology, but we're just going to work with it. So, for this 10 minutes, what I want is to invite you to reflect about culture and how culture has been now added as our fifth skill. Um, it's important first to first see how culture is and what the connection between culture and language. So, the first thing we're going to do is talk about culture and how some authors approach this, right? This concept. So for authors like Scarino and Kohler and others, culture is a complex system where there are conventions, behaviors, practices, rituals, lifestyles that identified a certain cultural group. And they even end up producing artifacts and interactions and way of living. Now, on the other hand, you have Brown, and Brown is saying, yes, they have ideas together, they have customs, the arts, tools, and everything that kind of characterize what they are. But is that all the time, or it's just given within one period of time? So that gives us a complex system that identifies a cultural group that are use their skills and their everyday and day to day to create something for themselves and an identity. But that is within a given period of time, which means that it's a dynamic system. It's a complex system that is organic, is dynamic. So based on this, and if we want to put a picture to this concept, we can see then that we have something like this, right? We have the surface of culture where there are things that are very visible to us. We have food, we have language, we have their holidays, festivities, the dance, the literature, the dance. With these are things that we interact with those cultures every day or things that we know about. But there's also one layer to culture, and it's that part that we may not see above the iceberg, or it's not something that we see every day when we interact with culture, like social norms, um, like the concept of justice, their philosophy on life, their attitude towards certain things, values or expectations about certain interactions and things. So if we think about culture as a complex system that is organic and that involves all of this, and language being part of that, we can see how language and culture are connected at one point. So if we want to see now culture and language together, Brown, and I'm going to read this to you, Brown says that a language is a part of culture as culture is part of that language. So the two are integrally interwoven so that one cannot separate the two without losing the significance of either language or culture. So in a gist, culture is language and language is culture. Language is built upon what culture is. If we see Littlecourt and what he states as the articulations between culture and language, we will see different stages or different moments where language and culture interact. If we go to the second arrow, you will see that we have spoken and written genders, and our culture, it's general text structure, right? If we think about maybe the way that in Oriental cultures write, most likely what they do is a spiral, right? They will give you all the arguments, all the whys, and then they will get to the point and say, here, this is my point. But if you go to the American or an American piece, you will see that, hey, this is my statement, and these are all my arguments. So it's more linear than something that is a spiral, right? So there comes to show you the connection that there is between culture and language. And let's not talk about norms and interaction. So the way that we talk to each other, the way that the words that we use, the way that we approach people, it's different. And even within our own language, we can see that. With a close group of people to you or friends, you will use a certain vocabulary or certain wording or certain expressions that you may not even use with friends from work, and that's within your own culture. So imagine that when you have to interact with other cultures, right? So this is very important. So with these two moments, what I want you to see is how culture is and how we can see that it is a dynamic system. And with this, what is the importance or the relationship with language. So this is my reflection on how these two work together. For me, language is the what. So it's what people use, it's what people learn. But culture is the why. Culture will give meaning to the language that you're learning, while language provides a means to create a new culture. And that happens also with the same within your same L1 experience or world. You will use your language to interact with others and create new part of your cultures, even maybe even change some of those beliefs and meanings or integrate some of those as well. So, but how are we doing that in the classroom? What is happening in the classroom when we talk about culture and we talk about language and how much interwoven they are, right? As Brown was saying. So if we show our students pictures like these ones, most likely you will see the students saying, well, if they see the Statue of Liberty, they will go immediately to New York. They will not think about the United States, but they will think about New York. If you show them the royal family, they will think about England. If you show them a hamburger, they will think about the United States. So most likely, our part of culture stays in that big C that Lee and Peterson at one point were discussing, right? There's a big C where there's things that you see from culture with the big C, with capital C, would say that better. Um, and you will see the landmarks, you will see the food, you will see arts, you will see people that represent that culture or that we attach to that culture for that matter. But then you have the small c. You will have those beliefs and those whys that not necessarily shown through these pictures. And more often than not, if we check our text and we see our textbooks, we will see that we have those reading pieces about culture, and you will have some questions on the bottom to comprehend the reading, but they will stay on the knowledge side. Who is it? Why is there? What's happening? What date? When? Who? It will all stay on that stage of the knowledge part. But if we go and see what the American Council of Teaching Foreign Languages describe culture as a skill, we will see that they state in their standard that students must demonstrate an understanding of the relationship between the perspective and the practices of of the culture that they're studying, but at the same thing, the relationship between the perspective and the products of that culture. So it's not so much about knowing about the culture, but it's a lot to do. It has a lot to do with the practices, with the products, and obviously knowing and understanding and interacting with that culture. So if we think of culture as the fifth language, we want to expect from our students something like this. This is an example based on something that we normally teach in the classroom, that is tip or how to tip. So if we want our students to be able to perceive and recognize the cultural differences, um, something that we want to see from our students is, if we talk about tipping, we want to see, oh, so this is who and how much I tip in the US. So great, now I know that this is the information I need. I can see what and who. And most likely, this is where we stay, most likely, when we come to our classes. The ability to accept cultural differences. This is a little deeper. This is another layer to understanding and interacting with culture. When they can see now what we expect for our students is saying something like, okay, when in the US, I will remember that I need to tip from 10 to 25%, but this is not so much the case for Canada, Australia, New Zealand, when, maybe could even be offensive if I tend to tip somebody. So again, it's not so much about recognizing that you need to tip, but it's also recognizing that there are differences within the practice that you're knowing among cultures that may even have the same language that you're using as your L1. So another layer to building that skill of being culturally sensitive, it's the ability to appreciate and value those cultural differences. So from our students, we would like to see something like, it is interesting how episodes in a country's history can still be influencing today's social interaction. Like, for example, tipping being like this social protest for people who are working in certain um, jobs, not having a minimum wage that can kind of help them with their everyday and their way of living. So it's not so much about having students knowing about this. It's about them understanding why the culture is the way it is, for them to create meaning for the language that they're learning, as language and culture are a result of each other. So, as the final thought for these 10 minutes, I want you to take with you two things. First, effective communication happens when language and culture are aligned. On why the language is constructed like that, or why do you use certain idioms to do this. The way you're learning the language makes no meaning to you because it doesn't have the why. You need a what with a why in order to be effective. So, a culturally sensitive L2 speaker will be equipped with the skills to interact with an L1 or with an L2 speaker, having the awareness and the appreciation for one's culture, because you don't lose your identity because of that, and others. So for me, this is the reflection that I would like to share. Please let's build in our classroom students that are culturally sensitive so we can have better citizens of the world and global citizens. Please remember to go to the GoFund page and donate. And to our friends in Puerto Rico, our hearts are with you and we love you.